My name is Alex. So as he told, I will talk a little bit about the challenges we had while we were struggling and trying to build one of the first SME challenger banks in Germany back then. Now I'm proud to say that it's probably #1 challenger bank in Germany, already expanded to Italy and growing further. I'm not part of it anymore, but well, that's the life. So here you will have a chance to see some of the most pronounced, most important challenges that we had to face during our growth. And before I start talking about the concrete challenges, I would like to narrow down a little bit the story and explain the scope, because this is really a huge topic. You can probably imagine that the challenges one-man show garage startup is facing are completely different than a set of challenges that 100 or 1,000 people already profitable startup will face in that moment. So they are the topics for completely different speeches. And here we will definitely focus on small and mid-sized startups. So this will be our focus, which is actually not a really huge restriction, given the fact that only a really small percentage of all startups will ever cross this line and become mid-sized startup, or not even to think about large startups. And the other narrowing is in the terms of area of startups we will be focused on. So startup is a set of many concerns and things. There are several people different in working in different disciplines, and of course it depends. The challenges they will meet will depend on the concerns they have and the role they're playing in the game. So you can see it as an area of a corporation. So we have marketing concerns, we have funding concerns, we have general administration concerns, financial concerns, product concerns, tech concerns, etc., etc. Obviously, here we will be focused on the tech part and challenges, how they're perceived from the position of a CTO or a tech group. Of course, the borders here are not really clean, and of course there's a common challenges as well. So I would say this is a pretty much generic story, and we will see a lot of overlapping between the concerns and the problems and challenges different areas can experience. So I think this is a little bit more than just talking about plain tech problems. And besides, I think it would be a little bit not very interesting actually focusing completely on the tech stuff and talking about the things Lazar mentioned, architecture and patterns and things like that. It would be narrowed down to a purely technical talk. And as we will see during the talk, the most serious problems or challenges actually deal with different type of problems, and not with technical and concrete problems we can foresee. They deal much more with emotions and some things that we have to learn by experience and gain an instinct. I hope with the more experience we all have more instinct and tackle all these problems better. So let's start with the first challenge. Actually, more than a challenge, I would say this is a system of forces that will drive the startup development from the very day one to probably already like a mature phase. So we have to somehow break the system of forces, which will explain now. So we have product, budget, and time. What's going on with them? First of all, when startup is funded and founded, and when they start working on the startup, it's more often than not very unclear what actually the startup will do. Some basic idea is there. Everybody knows we will create a fintech or insurtech or legal tech or whatever to solve some kind of problem. So co-founders normally they know the problems they want to solve, but they know they don't know the exact features and the exact product design that they will gonna develop in the next couple of months, some first version. So it's definitely very unclear how this product will look like. So we have to build something that we don't know actually in the first moment what it is. What's going on with budgets? As we know, well, in the beginning of a startup life, more often than not, there will be no budget, or it will be really limited. Sometimes the co-founders themselves put some money in or choose to work for free until they reach some kind of idea or some shape, something presentable that they can show to the investors or to whoever, some fund that will help them have the money, but all the young startups will definitely have a, let's say, seriously restricted budget. And the same happens with the time. Startup is all about innovation. There is no startup which will appear to offer just a normal restaurant or things like that, or some business that already exists. They have to do some, it's in the definition of startup, some certain part of innovation in the whole story. So there are many of them running at the same time, going as soon as possible to the market. So the first who comes obviously has a huge advantage. It doesn't mean to be that the story is over. There is a huge fight there. For example, if you see currently in Berlin, we are experiencing this, like I would say, we are swamped with these e-rollers that appeared like last couple of months. I think they weren't here a year ago. I'm not exactly sure, but I'm definitely sure 2 years ago they weren't here, but probably a year ago. Now there are 6 of them, 6 companies which jumped in the same time, and they're really running with the time and fighting and defining and thinking how to survive the winter. And this is not a joke, actually. This will be the first winter that most of them will experience. So they don't know. I talked with some people from one of those companies. They really don't know how to do. They're still defining their product and thinking how to face the winter, actually. So that's all about it. They have to be really quickly in order to be successful. So bottom line, we have to build something we don't exactly know how it should look like in a really limited time and with almost no budget. So it sounds like a mission impossible, and probably that's the reason why most of the startups failed. We have to have some kind of strategy and some kind of idea how should we face this system of forces. We will see in the rest of the challenges we will visit, they will all be linked with this one. So I will come back several times during this talk back to this one. But basically, how to try to face this problem. We cannot do too much with the budget, of course. We can always try to get some we will anyway work on achieving the budget. With time we cannot do anything, but otherwise than being lean and try to be fast. What we can do is a product. So we can try to narrow down our scope for our first version, for our first MVP, how it's called in the world of startup. Probably everybody here knows, or most of you. Is there anybody here who doesn't know what an MVP in the world of startup is? Okay, that's a minimum viable product. That's a term which calls the first version that all the good practices and guidelines in startup will tell you. In order to break this triangle, focus as soon as possible on the smallest possible scope of the problem you want to solve. Get out on the market and start collecting user feedback. In startup, it's all about the user feedback. The traditional company's culture is not that customer focused. I worked a lot for corporations, and I really worked in the projects where we built products without even talking to the future customers, which is completely incredible from the startup point of view. No startup will survive the months after launch if the user is not considered really seriously from the day one. So in order to deal with all those forces, the point is to focus on the minimum set of features that we have to something that we can offer to a world, to make them use it, and then start asking them, okay, what else do we need? What would you do differently? What do you like it? Do you not like it? Because if you try to decide and define this too early, you will have a feedback that is misleading. Without using a product, nobody will know how the product actually, if it is good or not. So it's not really reliable to ask people much before the launch what features do they need. So that's mostly the way how do we deal with this. We try to define this small focus, do the market research as lean as possible, go as soon as possible to the market, and then try collecting feedback and dealing with the others. Of course, as the scope is smaller, then the budget needed will also be smaller, and we will be able to build it in a less time. The second one is I would say the only one purely really technical in nature. So smart architecture evolution. As we know, startup and the product we are building is a long-term endeavor. This is something that it's not gonna live for 2 months and then die or be recreated or whatever. When we start this, it's a really, really long journey, hopefully years or more. So in order to create something that will be of sufficient quality and sufficiently stable and robust and permit us continue growing it and continue the evolution of the product, we have to ensure somehow high quality architecture. All the stories that Lazar mentioned come exactly here. In order to do the good architecture, we need to follow some standards, we need to follow some patterns, we need to listen to some smart guys like these Martin guys he mentioned and the other back. We have to respect all this, but all this take time and also take money, and we don't have either. So we are in a problem here. I think all developers know that and one of the first lessons they learn is about the reuse. Software is everything about the reuse. Actually, when we create software, we are always in the background thinking, okay, this have to be reusable. I have to do it the way I can reuse it later in some other context. We never think about software as something fixed that will be enclosed in the box and stay there. It will continue growing, if we are lucky, forever or near that, and it will continue changing. In order to be able to change and continue lean enough and to follow the dynamics that the other startups are pushing, we need to do this faster. We don't have time to sit 1 month and think about how to make our reusable architecture, how it can survive the next 10 years like we used to do in a traditional corporation. And the reason is simple. Then they put all the budget there. You have budget, you can book the next 2 years of your life, and you know you will spend it there building this. But in startup it's different. You may not live enough to see your architecture working. So you have to be lean. But if you're too lean and the quality is too low, you will not be able to survive the next phase. So it's all about the trade-offs. It's all about how to balance on the really thin edge between dying and succeeding to the next ground. So we have to somehow be able to do the trade-off, to know what is really, really, really important, what we have to take care right now, what we can postpone. Besides this generic story, for example, there are a lot of questions regarding the software architecture. Which technology do we use? Which frameworks do we use? Which tools do we use? How do we tackle the so-called non-functional requirements like scalability, security, data privacy? For example, in my case of Penta, I had to deal especially with data privacy, security, scalability. These are the reliability as well. These are the top architecture requirements that we have to build in. So I couldn't just not think about them in the beginning, because I knew, okay, we do the prototype and then what after? So how do we break this? Of course, now go back to the system of forces here, and you will understand why all this is so tricky. So the way to try to deal with this is to think, to make the analysis, and to understand in which moment of time we actually need different features of our system, of our product, of our architecture. Although if we are successful, it will reach many customers. We reached, for example, 5,000 in the first year. Now it's more than 10,000, and hopefully the next year will be hundreds and things like that. But the good news is that you don't need it for MVP. In the moment of MVP that you terribly need in order to survive the first phase, you don't need the scalability. Your system doesn't need to be so scalable. It even doesn't need to be that reliable. Of course, to common sense, it has to work, it has to be up, it cannot crash, but it's different level of seriousness we are talking to. And the similar is with other principles as well. Data security, privacy, there are different levels of security you can introduce. You don't have to go with the first one, with the top critical one in the first moment, and actually it would be a mistake, because it would take too much budget and too much time too early. So again, we have to sit and think. Of course, we have to find time for thinking and to smartly make our architecture grow. Also, reuse. I mentioned it in the beginning. So we want to reuse. We don't want to waste our software and to throw it away. But sometimes it's inevitable. And in a startup, a lot of startups actually start thinking that the whole first MVP will be thrown away. And I was faced with this kind of proposal when I was working in Penta, and as an engineer, somebody who used to make engineering things, it like hurt me really much. I couldn't imagine doing something just for the next 3 months and then throwing it away. It would be too boring. Any kid can draw a page that looks like a bank, right? If it's not like meant to be reused later, it's like no fun at all. So, for example, I realized that some parts will definitely have to be sacrificed. For example, user interface. That's like most fragile part. The user will see that part and will object. And there is no chance you can launch a product that people will love at the first. No chance at all. So don't even try it. That's the first lesson. Don't think that user will love it. Be sure that they will hate it, and be prepared to react. So be prepared to throw some part of it. And in this case, for example, I was thinking, okay, if I anyway have to throw the user interface, okay, I will then use a technology that makes it easy to prototype, that it makes it easy to launch it first way. Anyway, it can be thrown away, and it will be connected with my backend during using some decoupled connection like REST API, enabling me to reuse the backend in the future. So customers cannot object about the backend, right? So that was our strategy, to win time, reusing completely the backend which we created, and focusing on making this part good, and making the front end fast and lean, and well, cry a little bit at the end of the day, but throw it away and start again. And that more or less that happened. Users hate it, especially the user interface, so we reskinned the whole app within a month after launching. So that's absolutely normal. Of course, that gives us another level of freedom, so we don't have to use some serious and heavy technologies in the beginning, although we might need them in the future. They are normally harder to install, harder to configure, simply tackling our time terribly. So this leaves us space to start with something easy to set up, easy to use, gain some budget or some user traction, and then go with a real thing. So regarding the scalability and other non-functional requirements, I like to call it just-in-time architecture feature integration. Just think in the beginning, leave the doors open. You don't have to make it scalable, as I told, but if you don't think about making this scalable in the future, you won't make it scalable. A simple example that probably most of the developers will understand. If you create a monolith system and monolith architecture, which is completely enclosed and deployed as a whole, that will clearly make problems in the future. Everybody knows about the microservices, stories, and Docker and everything, but this requires time. In order to create microservices, we have to deal with event-driven systems, with the event-driven middlewares, with much more complexity. So to create MVP in Docker and with microservices is a crazy idea. So what we can do, we can create a monolith application, but design it that way, according to a good OOP principles, that we can later decouple it, split it in several parts, and just in time introduce scalability feature to our system. So that would be similar way of thinking, can be applied basically on each one of those concerns that we might have. Let's go on. The third challenge I find really important and central is a relationship between the product and a tech in a team. So I dare to say that this is probably the most critical part of the process, the most critical part of the structure in the beginning, out of different reasons. First of all, product tech is building actually what is to be built. So all other areas or other people are there as a support, even the CEO. Actually, he should be the biggest support of everybody else in the team if he thinks right. That's the only way to go. He's not making concrete stuff. He's asking for funds, he's trying to look for strategies, he's doing other stuff, but actually who is physically building the concrete product are those two areas, product and tech. And these are normally two areas, not a single one. Although the tendency in the startups in the last time is that actually these two areas are like merging together under the product, putting somehow tech below the product and under control, exactly to increase the velocity of the development, and to tackle with the problems that made me put this challenge on the list. Where is the problem? Problem is, first of all, in the border between those two areas. It's really blurred. It's not clear what is actually the treatment of the product. Who is the product? Is CPO, product manager, product owner. There are many names they put, and tech is head of engineering, CTO, and VP of engineering, those names. So there are always two personalities doing these two things in the company, no matter how you call them. And the limits between them are definitely unclear. That makes it harder to organize the work. On the other side, if you dive a little bit inside, you will actually understand that those two guys have different and conflictive targets, aims, missions, although the overarching target is the same, to be the most successful startup in the history of startups. But when it comes to my personal backyard, those two guys have definitely conflictive criteria, conflictive interests. Product guy will want to satisfy the user as soon as possible. No discussion at all. He wants that, let's build it. He wants that quickly, let's build it. Yeah, the competition will build it the next month, we have to be first. So we have to go fast, building value, features. On the other side, tech has to do it. So, roughly said, product is telling what to build, while tech is telling how to build it. That's easy to say, but as told, not easy to differentiate. Just a little puzzle. For example, navigation inside the app and UI elements of the app, are they part of the product or part of the tech concern? It's not that easy. Also prioritization, it should be completely up to the product. But in the backlog, in the product manager's backlog, they will be not only feature items, they will be also some technical items, some kind of refactorings or technology, that solution or whatever. It's invisible for the customer. And the most of the product guys will not have that understanding for this kind of the tasks. So they will be fight. They will come here. The product guy will tell, let's go, let's push with this. The CTO will be scared and tell, but we have to do, we are postponing this refactoring already 3 sprints. We are going worse and worse, because he knows that this is a long-term impact. Fall of the quality, degradation of the quality of the system has a long-term impact not only on tech, but also on product. So it's always easier to swallow this story when you're on the other side. You won't be staying every day to the 12 to the midnight to solve some problems. But they will be there, and it's really, really hard to tackle this situation. If you lose the quality early, it will be really, really impossible to recover it. Although they say, yeah, but now we are in the problem, we have to solve this. In 2 weeks, in the next sprint, we will deal with the refactoring, but it never comes actually. So this is the problem. How can we solve it? First of all, the process should be adopted as soon as possible and as lean, as simple as possible. So define, talk, make those guys talk and define the frontiers. Use examples and explain, what should I do, what should you do? In which point I get, what is how you're overtaking it, what you will do. Use tools. There are so many good tools, simple tools, not many tools, just a simple tools like, for example, Jira and Confluence worked for us perfectly. So product guy writes here, when he's done, he does something, and then the tech can take over. So clear up the boundaries, clear up the process, and most important, and more important than that, make those two guys friends. Make sure that they're on the same page, they think the same way. If they're not, there is no rule that they can make this work. If they're thinking the different way, if they have to discuss each time that we are planning sprint which item should go first, we are losing time terribly, we are not lean enough, and we will die soon. So you can do whatever you want from the technology point of view. Those two guys should share values in the first place, and not only business values, but also, of course, first of all, business values, but after that, even more important, human values. And it's an ingredient that you will probably not read in a technical book about, but I think it's much more impacting than any algorithm or pattern problem you can think of. So that's why I like to mention this topic often. The next, without a team, there is nothing there. So from the day one, we have this concern, and it never disappears. It only grows as the team is growing. So in order to build any kind of product, especially really good and cool and successful products, we need a superb tech team, not only tech. Of course, this challenge can be replicated across the startup, because each team lead, each area will have the similar problems with different solutions and different strategies and approaches. In case of the tech team, we have several decisions to take and several problems to solve in order to go with a really superb team. First of all, in order to have a really good team, we have to hire good persons, good people. So I would mention the hiring as one of the most important processes in a startup. Actually, there is not too many things that hurt so much as a bad hire, and that make damage progress, execution, not only outcome, simply the whole execution, because the bad hire is a wasted time. Interviewing, wasted time, training, mentoring, whatever, introducing it to the company, wasted time, testing it, trying it, wasting time identifying that he actually is not skilled enough or good enough, or he doesn't fit simply enough out of any reasons to this, and we all lost all this time and effort, which can be critical, taking into account the time force we mentioned on the beginning. So please here put the really lot of effort and lot of energy in the first of all hiring, because everything starts with the hiring. Make every candidate talk to several people, be sure that he will fit the company culture, which is really important thing. It's not a joke, it's not a message on the wall. If he doesn't fit, it's a small environment, it's something different from the corporation. In corporation, we cannot communicate between us. We can live there and don't know anybody. But in startup, we share hours and days and problems and everything, and if we don't go along together, nothing will work. So first, good hiring. Make it clear what do you need, and take good analysis, not only from the point of view of technical skills, but also the soft skills, psychological skills, and cultural fit. Next, we have to decide, should we build a team locally or remotely? That's like a typical problem startups faces with. Normally, everybody would like to have team at home, because it's solving the communication problem and it's the most efficient way to work. But mostly it will be the most expensive way, of course. So a lot of startups will outsource development and create some remote development point just to accelerate, just to tackle the budget problem and try to lower it down. But again, if it's a trade-off, are we winning more lowering the price, or we're losing more with our quality and overhead in communication? So it's not that easy. It's trade-off. Something that will work for one will not work for another. For example, in our case of Penta, we decided to externalize and to have development center in Serbia out of obvious reasons. We have it's a cost reason, and more than that, actually, as three co-founders were from that land. We know the way of thinking, we know the mentality, we can get along easier, we can go through hiring easier, because we can recognize faster if this guy is going to fit us or not. It's harder when the cultures are different. So in our case, it worked. In some other cases, it might not work. That's one of the decisions. And especially concerning part is the level of skill that we need. In order to have a superb team, we have to have superb talents, so skilled, experienced people that will accept to join us. But we don't have money. So again, the same problem. We have to create something particularly amazing, but we don't have money or time to do it. So we have to apply some tricks. One of the guidelines is definitely try to have aboard a co-founder, which will be which could take care of most of the things. Like in our case, for example, I already had experience. I could deploy. I'm not an expert DevOps. I'm not an expert QA. I'm not an expert lot of things, but I know what we need. I had enough experience, so I knew what the scope is. I could code myself, which is really important for the beginning. So we saved a lot of money having on board a co-founder, which takes care of a lot of tech scope we need in the beginning. Of course, nobody can handle everything, and we had a couple of holes that we needed to hold. How can you do it? For example, for the problematic of DevOps. We had a really rock star DevOps from Belgrade. My friend joined the group, but we couldn't pay him full time back then. So we agreed, okay, let's give us please a couple of hours a week or a month, and help us until we reach the point we can actually hire somebody. And it worked perfectly. He was charging really expensive, so between us 90 euros per hour, and the CEO went crazy when he saw it. But this guy was solving in 5 hours what average DevOps that we can have in market for 80,000 per year, or freelancer even more, could not be able to take care in 2 weeks. So actually it was a really huge relief and a good trick to have a skill for money that we have, that we simply needed to skill. No matter how talented young developers and junior developers are, they don't have a big picture, they don't have instinct developed. We need both. We need experienced guys, wisdom. We need somebody to stop and to think and to project things, and we need a young energy and passion that only young developers can bring. So this is the formula. Start with a really skilled ones in the beginning, 1 or 2, then a couple of really talented and passionate younger guys who will, of course, through the mentoring and other techniques, really quickly learn new stuff and progress much faster than we could expect. Anytime converting to a really useful and productive resources soon. So instead of buying the skill, let's produce skill. Let's buy talent and then train those guys to be more skilled and to play mentors to the new generations that will come. So this is mostly the struggle I had forming the team the whole time. A lot of mentoring, serious hiring, not too much, not micromanagement. Please take, this is really important. Again, another pitfall here. How to be sure that we are going, what is the frontier between mentoring and micromanagement, for example? What is the frontier about assuring the needed level of quality and micromanagement? So, and especially I think that most of these younger generations are really sensitive on this world, the micromanagement. Like, it sounds like so scaring that it will be a hard time to defend mentoring actually and explain to the others that it's not a micromanagement. It's really important that the newcomers understand the architecture before they start coding. So that would be some of the ideas how to create a good team. The last challenge I would like to mention is actually the most generic one, and tackling the execution itself. So no matter what type of startup is, no matter what area, all will have to deal with decision taking and with the conflict management. So the journey, this long journey of a startup growth and building, will be scattered with a lot of decisions that we have to take on the road. Some of them will be really hard ones, the other will be, most of them of course, not really terrible, but somebody needs to tackle them. And each solution to each of these decisions will take some time, will take some budget, and will makes us slower. Some of those decisions will convert to conflicts. So we have to find some strategy to really improve the execution of our work, to accelerate the decision taking, and to reduce to a minimum level the conflicts that will arise. Actually, conflicts will arise. We have to find a way to handle them. Given the fact that the people who are starting startups, especially working in this early and mid phase, are passionate people who are really believe in this idea and they work night and day to create it, there will be a lot of emotions in the whole process, and when emotions are there, it's really hard to avoid the conflict and to make the line between the actually subjective perception and something which is good and which is in interest of the startup as a whole. So there is nothing that can slow us more that can slow us down more than actually too much conflicts, too much discussions, too much evolving. It's important that co-founders talk to each other, take decision together, and lead the company together in towards the growth. But everything has to be limited. Everything has to be lean. We have to learn to accept the things that we might don't like. If they're not against our values, or if we don't think the whole startup will explode and we will die, we have to learn to resist, and we have to learn to accept the something that we don't like. For example, in Penta we had a case that I personally didn't like the branding and the way the whole design has been done in our website, and it was too similar to all the others. It was like boring and everything, and I really could not accept it. It was on a completely emotional level. We spent 2 days, not only me, some other people had different ideas, but we spent 2 days without being able to settle down the story and to go on, because we couldn't agree. Okay, let's stop and continue tomorrow, and so it's a break. We are losing time. Why? Because somebody doesn't like the look and feel of our site. So I was thinking a lot and realized, well, at the end of the day, it's not your concern. You know, it's we have to fly. You're a tech guy. You don't understand. Maybe it's really beautiful. I don't know. Maybe our customers will love it, and that's the point. That's important. They have to love it, not me, in that case. And that's one of the first lessons I would, or suggestions I would give here. Watch your backyard. Each co-founder should be focused on and had a power to decide in his own backyard. So they're the designer guy and marketing guy. They will decide about branding, no matter how the others they don't like it. I'm the tech guy. I will decide the technology. I will decide if we are going to build remotely or locally. And nobody could. They can object. They can, of course, they can ask questions. They can we can discuss. And actually, not that only that they can, they should. But again, not too much. So the good suggestion is to keep oneself backyard clean. And in order to do that, it's also very important that the co-founder team is covering relatively big piece of the scope of the whole work to be done without too much overlapping. Because if there is overlapping, they will have conflicts again. So that's again a good thing. And on the top of everything, keep the co-founders count low. So of course it will be much leaner and faster if we have 2 or 3 co-founders than if we have 10 of them. So it's a good idea to start low. I think personally that 3 is a perfect number, because 2 are pairs, so they will have hard time deciding when they do not agree. If there are 3, there is always a way to take decision if we cannot put it in our own backyard. And again, the most important part of everything is actually not technical, not on the business level. It's completely on the human level, and it has to do with our values. And I left it on purpose for the end of this discussion, because I think that's the most important impact and most important factor is that we really share values as a co-founders. Of course, it's also important for the rest of the company, but these are crucial, these first guys. And as bigger the company grows, the less this whole let's say values thing is important. So in the beginning, it's really important that we share between co-founders human values and also business values. That's the only way we can take decision together. If one of the co-founders is striving to create like a unique experience product, like boutique product, whatever it is, a bank or whatever, and the others want commercial side and want just to have millions of customers as soon as possible, they will not be able to go through lean execution. So start with a small team of the people you really trust and you believe that you share values with, and that's a perfect base for all the rest of it up. So thank you.